Mai haere mai. Welcome everyone to our June formal council meeting. Welcome to those here in the room and also to those on live stream. Kia ora. We have got one councillor on remote this morning, Councillor Yeoman, and also our financial advisor, Stu Henderson. Welcome. So we have also got people in our public area, which is great to see, and I'll just run through the health and safety points. So if the fire alarm goes off, exit down the stairwell to the assembly point, which is the visitor car park. Earthquakes, drop, cover and hold. Visitors, please make sure that you have signed in at reception and also that you sign out when you leave. And you must wear your name sticker, please. The toilets are on the opposite side of the stairwell. And also please adhere to the recommended COVID alert guidance that applies. So we'll move now to our opening karakia, tuaki a roto, and I'll ask Councillor Robinson if he would do the honours. Thank you.
Okay, well, if you'd all stand, if we can all stand. Tēnei au, tēnei mātou, te kai kaunihira, te kāwenga i ngā whakataunga, i ngā tikanga, ki uta, ki tai. Ki rewa ai ngā iwi katoa, o te taitoko. Hauri e, hui e, tae ki e. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Marty. There are no apologies. And we will take declarations of conflicts of interest as we go, unless there are some that people would like to declare right now. No, okay, so we'll move on to item 5, which is the minutes, council minutes and action sheet. 5.1 is confirmation of minutes. We've got 2 lots of minutes here. The minutes from the May council meeting and also the annual plan deliberations. Both were held on the same day. Could I have a mover and seconder for both of those, please? Thank you, Rick. Seconded Amy. Are there any matters arising? No. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. 5.2 is the action sheet, and that's on page 16. Could I have a move and seconder? Move and seconder, please. Thank you, Justin. Seconded Marty. Any matters arising on that? Those? I think that they're all completed.
I didn't know if another one has been updated on the RSH.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the RSH board meeting did occur last week. As I previously advised council, the SOI has been substantially rewritten since the draft that was presented to council previously to deal with the issues around the structure and the debts going forward and the conversion of RSHL from the current software orientated model to a more shared service platform. It was quite a long board meeting, and that resulted in a number of further recommendations around tweaks and clarifications in the SOI. So I haven't actually received the final copy yet. So it was approved subject to the changes that were made in the board meeting. The major change was the removal of the reference to trustee companies in the SOI. So in terms of the way forward, while it may still be a need and at some future date to introduce subsidiary or trustee companies, that initially it's going to be dealt with by issuing different classes of shares. So in terms of our current involvement, all the 6 councils that currently own Iris Classic are going to be issued a B-class share to reflect that ownership in the same percentages that we own now. and the new A-class shares will be issued on the basis of 1 share per council that wants to join. And we're hoping to land between 9 and 11 councils that take up the A-class shares in the initial round. But that is subject to the various council decisions. So some councils still have to complete their consultation around joining the CCO, but which we don't have to do because we're already a member. So those were some of the sort of major changes.
That was the most critical one for you.
Well, Chair, it was both the shareholder. I think the 3 issues for me was the shareholding, the appointment of directors, and the debt. So I mean, 1 or 2 the very small councils are still struggling with the debt, and we're working away at seeing how we can support that, and or find an alternative manner of dealing with that. But Plenty Council have put their hand up and said they're prepared to assist those councils to try and get it through, because the debt in terms of the larger council is sort of insignificant. But that's still very much a work in progress. As I say, the issue around the shareholdings and the structure have been resolved, and the director appointments, that has been changed so that the current board will roll over into the new council until the next AGM, at which point the entire board will step down and a new board will be selected on the basis of 6 non-independents. So it'll be 6 from the councils and 2 independent directors. But we won't be able to determine a process of how those 6 will be determined until we know how many shareholder members there are. But we do expect, as I say, somewhere between 9 and 11. So it does mean that there'll have to be a process put in place as to how the councils as shareholder determine who they nominate to be the 6 directors, but we haven't got that level of detail yet.
And so because we approved it last time with knowing that there was some work to be done, it doesn't need to come back to council. SOI?
No, Chair. So again, for SOI processes, the council has had its opportunity to make comment. The board has taken those comments into account in rewriting the SOI. The SOI now gets finalised, approved by the board, and then just given back to the councils. Once you receive that back again, then you have an opportunity to object if there's something in there that you're dissatisfied with. So it's not actually an approval by council, it's just a right of objection.
Any questions on that?
Just one more question. So at present, we've got 6 major councils involved with it, which I guess are those A class that you talk about.
So currently there's 6 councils, of which we're the second largest.
Yeah.
Waikato is the largest, we're the second largest. Now, all of those 6 will become B class shares when the conversion takes place, and a new set of A class shares will be issued on the basis of 1 share per council, so that we're all equal. So on the current basis, we own 16.75%, and it's weighted based on our financial contribution. The B class shares, which will still continue their own Iris Classic, will still be weighted based on financial contribution. But the new A class shares, which will form the board, will be based on one man, one vote, or one woman, one vote. Yeah, so to speak.
One share, one vote. Yeah. And so who are the other 3 or 4 that you're thinking of?
Well, we don't know for certain yet, but as I reported last time, the three that are more than likely definitely out initially, at least are Auckland, Wellington and Ican. And then the 4 unitaries are busy considering their position at the moment. So we're expecting at least some of the 4 unitaries to come as well, which will make up the numbers.
Yeah, thanks.
Just a question about, the item about the Regional Transport Committee to consider the anti-littering strategy in schools. Has there been any further?
So that's up for the next meeting, and the story of that is September.
Yeah, so will there be an opportunity for our council to sort of potentially have a short workshop or discuss, what our message will be at that, for that particular agenda item? Because we've got to go with position or some sort of straw man for a strategy to get the outcomes we want, because and will we be questioning issues such as NZTA mowing the roadside, without having removed all the litter prior, because that was
Our general process for that sort of thing going to working parties or subcommittees is to cycle it through COT.
COT, so we'll schedule some
So we can
time
do that.
prior.
Yep.
Yep.
I think we agreed on that when you brought it up, Justin, that we would discuss it. We said we put it on the agenda and we would discuss it before.
Yeah, so being in the action sheet here is really just a note
Remind
to
us.
remind.
Yeah, okay, good one.
Thank you.
So we'll put it on the COT
Yep.
agenda as well, so it can be just in here too. And the I don't know, given that the Poplar and Willow nursery expansion will be discussed in 2023, that could be completed as well.
Yeah.
Chair, I happened to have a spare half hour yesterday afternoon, so I went for a site visit out at Poplar and Willow Nursery on my way back from Newa, and I was really impressed. I mean, it's looking the best that I've just about ever seen it. And while the growth rates across the nursery are variable in places due to the soil conditions, I mean, the entire block is now planted and looking really good, and the staff and contractors were out there busy doing the harvest and busy preparing both bowls and wands for distribution. So it was really looking good. So
Excellent. I will take that feedback back to appropriate stuff, don't it? Awesome, thank you, Malcolm. All right, all those in favour of the receiving the action sheet?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to item 6, which is our financial report, 6.1 financial report to 31st of May 2020, which is on page 18. We have the one recommendation there for that it be received. Rather moved and seconded. Thank you, Jack. Seconded, Colin. I do note that we've got a new table there. Summary of gains impact. Are there any staff members that would like to? The verbal update was mentioned. Is that still relevant?
yeah, I think
we've had it.
with Bruce being all ill today, I'd rather take questions if we might.
Sure. Okay, any questions? I've got Justin and then Jack.
Well, just with the losses in terms of externally managed funds, are there predictions in terms of how that may impact operational funding for the next financial year? Will we be drawing down on the operational reserve, or?
Yeah. You want to have a go, Vincent? Okay.
Might need to give Vincent a
Mike.
Kia ora, Chair. My understanding is that at this stage we weren't required to draw down on the OPEX reserve, though if losses continue and we need that money for a shortfall in works next year, we may need to do it next year. But at this stage, not for this year, is my understanding.
So that equates to that salary surplus will be a true surplus. It's not being incorporated into.
No, Chair, I mean, while I don't think we need to look into operational reserves because the losses will be small enough that we can accommodate that within our working capital. My expectation is that we won't have any surplus at the end of the year. The operation. So currently we
So I guess the question is, where is that staffing, the salary surplus been appropriated to?
well, it hasn't gone. It's effectively never been generated because the managed funds have
So it's basically been transferred over to account for the
losses.
the losses in the managed funds.
Been offset by the losses.
Just to Malcolm, the £1.5 million lower than budgeted transfers from the enterprise system representing lower costs than budget at this stage of the project. Is that just a timing issue, or are we actually likely to come in under?
Councillor, it's purely a timing issue because while the project is just about on time, the invoicing hasn't occurred, and a lot of that has been caught up just in the last week. So
In the CEO report, there's 3 green stripes as to the
Yeah.
enterprise system. So.
Okay, and supplementary to that, because of all the other external impacts and effects, do you anticipate that we won't have any problem at all transferring over, carrying forward budgets at all? And also, do you think there'll be any operational issues like enterprise, for instance, in terms of these delays affecting our ability to do business?
So my instruction to staff is that we will have no carry forwards other than where we've already signed a contract. So we don't have a legal obligation. It's unlikely that we will have any carry forwards. And while that's a very broad statement, I mean, we will look at each item by item and come back to council if there's a specific recommendation. But broadly, we don't think we're going to be in a position to get.
So that won't have any impact on the annual plan commitments? Will they be taken into account?
It's just too early to answer that. Yeah. So it may well mean that, depending, I mean, a lot depends on the extent of the losses now in June. I mean, now we've had the first 10 days of June were particularly severe into the market, but how that translates into the actual result of the managed funds, we don't know until middle of July. And at that point, we'll have to work out whether it's going to impact on next year's and
And my last question was on, do you anticipate any impact on our business, our ability to do business right now? Like, for instance, the enterprise system being a bit late, it doesn't sound like that's too much of a problem. Are there any other impacts over the next few months, do you think?
So I think we've previously reported that there are a number of our KPIs that we're not going to have met as a result of COVID and staff shortages and so on. So we're not aware of any new major impact that we haven't reported previously to council.
So it'll all be a lot clearer in August, won't it?
Yes, true.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll go to Rick first and then Justin.
No, I've been interested in Stuart's comments on the end of the financial year, but I think if we look at Malcolm's point, we really can't, the next couple of days, we don't know until we get to the end of the financial year and we get our summation sort of middle of next week. But Stuart might have some more comments on that. I read your paper the other day, Stuart, so thanks for that. Thanks for your very clear update. Thank you.
Thank you. So through the chair, if I could ask a couple of questions, perhaps Justin, you might be able to, sorry, Vincent, if you could perhaps help me on this. I note that our transfer to special reserves to date is about 2.6 million more than budget, i.e. at 5.3 million versus 2.7 million. Wouldn't it be fair to say that that 2.6 million should actually be included in the summing of when you are evaluating the externally managed funds, i.e. we talk about losses, which are unrealised losses. They're effectively a revaluation at the end of each month of what our external funds are. And as Rick has mentioned, that total we won't know until 30 June in a few days' time, and it may be higher than what is currently being mooted. But wouldn't it be fair to say that we're not including that 2.6 million of already transferred funds to special reserves within the summing up of this? The report talks about a $75 million overall surplus at this point. Isn't that being understated by the value of that 2.6?
Not 75 million. Not 75 million.
7.5.
No, 75K thousand. So we've got a 75,000 favourable at the moment, but isn't that being undervalued to the extent of the 2.6 million addition, in excess of budget transfer to reserves?
Who would like to answer?
Chair, I mean, I'll start and then Vincent can add to it if need be. I mean, Stuart, yes, you can argue that, but essentially what the transfer to the reserve is the unutilized part of the contingent liability of future work. So if you look down, the biggest chunk is the 1.6 million transfers to flood schemes. And that's just because the work on the flood schemes is behind schedule. But that money has effectively been committed already. So it's a timing issue that it's sitting in reserve because the physical building of, and in this case particularly the bridge at Mariwa has been delayed because of us still having to go through the courts on that. But it is a contingent liability that we're required to spend. And in that case, because of the money that we got from the PGF, and it's our share of, it's part of the PGF money plus our own share towards that. So I don't know.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I think through the chair, I'll just there were a number of questions by councillors that have kind of gone to a number of my questions, but I'll sum up, and that is that if we look at the surplus as it currently stands, which will be confirmed, as I say, in about 2 or 3 days' time, most of that surplus is due, well, all of that surplus is due to lower than budgeted expenditure. Now, that expenditure has been mentioned, a significant portion of that expenditure, from what I understand from Malcolm, is not going to carry forward, in the sense that it isn't likely to be a timing difference. But just how much of that difference which currently is 9% below budget of expenditure. Just roughly, is there an estimate from management as to how much of that is going to be a timing difference that will be caught up this year, i.e. by 30 June?
Chair, I haven't seen the figure yet. I know the team have been working on that. I'm not sure if that's.
Yeah, kia ora. We're still working on those numbers, and we're not quite in a position really yet to say what that exactly is going to be. I have been talking to Jono and Don in particular, who have the lion's share of that, but we haven't landed on exact figures until at this stage.
Okay.
I appreciate councillors and our financial advisors want to get some clear direction here, but I think it's too early. We don't want to be crystallising or making assumptions or putting things out there that may or may not happen. So, have you got? Is that sufficient, Stuart?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Justin.
Yeah, I've got two questions. Just the Sharp project there, Jono, that's quite a considerable, amount of money that hasn't been spent. And I know, we've got, very low numbers in the land management team, so that's undoubtedly a factor as to why historically over the years we've struggled to sort of get that fund out. Is that's correct to a degree? So is uptake an issue as well, like the amount of landowners that have actually been willing to take up the funds?
All the KPIs have been met, haven't they?
Got it, Chair. KPIs have been met, and for that outstanding amount that you see there in the item, there's a combination of invoices that are yet to go to MPI. Some of it has been rephased into the next financial year, so we haven't lost it. That figure comes down to around $37,000 of funding that we haven't been able to either allocate or rephase.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
I had the same question.
No, thank you, Jono. Very good, because it sort of was quite a large figure on paper. Yeah, I mean, I just want to go back to my original question, because I was on the council that established the operational reserve, and I would have thought at the end of the financial year, the council would have the decision whether or not to use the OPEX reserve to account for, low returns on that managed fund. Because, the way I look at it, when you've got that salary, accumulation of unspent salaries, which really equates to work that we haven't been able to do, delivery that we haven't been able to do. So there's options there for the council, that salary, could be put into the equalisation reserve. And if returns don't come, if returns came back on managed funds in the short, in the future, you could utilise that OPEX reserve and do work with the salaries, because, so I'm just pointing out options there for the council.
So currently the OPEX reserve sits at 2.3 million. In terms of next year's budget, the OPEX reserve drops to 2 million, just slightly over 2 million. So it was just slightly in excess of 200,000, if my figures are correct, they're not seeing that has been built into next year's budget is effectively coming back to be able to fund work next year. Yes, absolutely. The council has the discretion to say that 2 million can come into this year's budget, but effectively it would leave next year's budget either with no OPEX reserve or with a shortfall of $2 million, because in developing the assumptions for the budget, which you'll recall was many months ago, we made the fundamental assumption that we would get through this year without touching the OPEX reserve, because at that point we were still in a positive territory on the managed funds. So yes, your point is technically correct. You've got the discretion to use it. I suppose our advice at this point would be, given that we'd assume that we wouldn't have to use it, that you're going to leave the next council with quite a major headache then if you did use it.
whatever you take out in one year, you need to put back in the following one.
The following, yeah. And we haven't planned to put it back.
I thought we established it to use when, managed funds were too low, and we couldn't, use those returns to do operations, and it doesn't appear that we're using it, utilising
No,
that.
that's correct. And had we been at full staff, going at full tilt with no COVID, we would have had to get dug into it to get there. But because of the COVID effects, we were, even with the best of intentions, we weren't able to deliver this year's full program of work. So, yeah, and that's why the two have sort of offset each other.
Because it's an OPEX reserve for operations. Rick, and then we might keep moving.
I just wanted to reiterate what I said before and what Stuart said, and I did speak to Jonathan Erickson yesterday, that, we need to wait till June 30th. There's no point in having these discussions now. Let's wait, let's see what the result is, and then we can have the discussions. It seems, it's all very well having them now, but let's just wait and actually see what the final figure is, and that will help us in making the decision. And I think Malcolm's point is Penny's point, that it's very relative, important that we try and be positive going forward to the next group. We don't want to leave them with a headache, so I think it's very important. Thank you.
Yes, Colin.
Or just an observation, the financial market, just, I think last night or yesterday, I saw things have taken a change. I don't know,
Up or
short
down?
term or what, yeah.
2 days to go. 2 days.
Yeah, it might be a bit late for this point in the year, but,
Well, 2 days.
yeah, but there could be light at the end of the tunnel, from my observation. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favour of the recommendation to receive? Against? Carried. Right, so, yeah.
Jumps down to item 7.2 and 7.3 first. The ordering is incorrect in the agenda, so we should set the frame before we do the detail on the rates.
Okay, so we're going to go to item 7.2, which is on page 43, which is the adoption of the annual plan. So we've got 3 recommendations there. Here's all 3. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Justin. Comments, questions, councillors? And you, Stuart? You've got any?
I've just got a brief comment, thinking back to the long-term plan when there was such a huge rate rise, we had the discussion around examining whether or not we might look at how our rates are set, and it was decided, it was going to be too much to go out to the community with a big rate rise plus, consultation around, changing the way we set rates, and just looking through our annual plan, noting again, because I remember the conversation was we were going to look at potentially looking at how we set our rates in the annual plan. That was the discussion of the long-term plan. We'd look at it the following year. Didn't happen, that's fine. But, going through how we set our rates, looking at how we've still got quite, I believe personally we've got a heavy reliance on land value, and that being how we set our rates, and just looking at Northland and the number of new houses being built, and thinking, do we need to, obviously next year will be a time to examine whether or not how we're setting our rates is fair. So
we've only got our land and fresh water and our regional economic development based on land value. All the rest are capital.
I'm still pointing out, is land value still the correct rate to apply?
Yeah, so that's not a conversation for today, one that we can have, or whoever can have next term. Any more questions?
Just one question. Is this just one question. Is this an electronic copy only, or is it being printed, sent out to print yet, or? Thank you.
So that was, sorry, I'll just, for anyone that couldn't hear, they'll be printing a small number of copies that will go to our regional offices. Sorry, Marty.
Thank you. No, I'll catch up afterwards. It's truly a typo.
Any further questions? Yes, Stuart.
Through the chair. I just had a question in relation to page 60, which is on the financials in relation to gains income. And I just note that it's looking at an increase on
What was
as
in year
opposed
two?
to, yes, in terms of, I mean, the gains income. My question probably was more towards management around whether or not, you know, that's kind of indicating gains income to be fairly similar to what we've been looking at in the past in relation to externally managed funds. And, you know, I just wonder, is that something that has been sort of reviewed or reconsidered in relation to what that figure should be? I note that dividend income is going to be down, which kind of surprised me because I thought that was likely to be on balance, looking at moving up. But unfortunately, Bruce isn't here to talk about that. I guess that was just my only point was that there didn't seem to be much shift and change in relation to those two figures that I thought would be a bit different.
I see in year one it was 9 million, and year two that's predicted to be 4.6, which is only 150 different to what was originally in the annual or year two. So it's a considerable drop from last year, gains income. But Malcolm, did you want to comment? Or
Yeah, Chair. So that budget figure is driven off the long-term SIPO expectations. So
Right.
as the SIPO expectations
Yep.
don't change, then that comes through into the budget. So that, yeah.
No, look, thank you. That explains it.
When we looked at the assumptions, while I mean, our advice has been for some time that at some point in the future there's going to be a dip. No one could predict when that was, so there was no basis for changing the assumptions that were in the budget.
Thanks, Malcolm. My only other just comment was more, and I take it this is a draft. It's still being they're still having a few things. I believe probably there are still some gaps being filled in, but I just noticed that the tables, so your tables like 2.2 and through the ones that are highlighted in green, I've got a funny feeling that those might not be might not have been populated.
Stuart, what page are you on?
I'm on
This is the final for
I'm on page 59 and page 60, and in terms of this electronic version that I've got, and it's, for example, under rating funding impact statement, where you got table 2.2. I'm just wondering if those totals within the highlighted green areas have actually been populated at this stage.
so just Stuart, just to clarify, this isn't a draft. This is the actual annual plan. Are you on page 59 of the annual plan or the agenda?
I think it comes through here. It looks like page 60 of the actual annual plan, but it could be on the agenda. I'm sorry, it doesn't come out very clearly for me here, but
so
sorry, I mean
the only line item I see that's not populated is the targeted regional infrastructure rate, and that was stopped.
No, I'm talking, sorry, folks. If you just look at the highlighted in the green or teal coloured highlights, and you look at table 2.2, heading is Ngāriti Reti rates, and it's the same for a lot of the headings. They all have 0 and I do beg your pardon. I'm sorry. Please ignore me. I'm absolutely sorry. Please ignore me on that. I've finally read it properly.
Okay, all good.
All over.
You were ignoring me, Stuart.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay, so we can move to page 43, which has got the 3 recommendations. We've got a mover and seconder. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. And now we'll go to 7.3, which is the adoption of user fees and charges on page 116. And then we'll cycle back to 7.1 after that.
Oh, okay.
We just had to do these 2 first before we did the rates. So we've got 3 recommendations there. Rick would like to move. Anyone second? Will someone second, please? Thank you, Amy. Any questions? Very minor changes to these ones. No questions? All those in favour of 1, 2 and 3? Against, carried. So now we'll go to 7.1, which is back on page 23. Rates for the year 1st July 22 to 30th of June 2023. We have a number of recommendations here. Shall we? Is everyone happy to take them all at once? I just skip some. Goes right through, doesn't it?
Yeah, 3 recommendations.
Just the 3. They go. Oh yeah. So we're okay to take all 3 together. Right, can I have a move and seconder, please? Move Jack, thank you. Seconded Colin. Any questions or comments? This is where you can. I just had one question about the under number 7 on the considerations that we had it reviewed by Lizzie. What did that actual review entail? Like she went through everything?
Yes, it's a legal review to ensure that we are applying the Writing Act correctly.
Okay, so she doesn't check the numbers, she just.
No,
yeah.
it's specifically legal.
Just wanted to make that clear for everyone. She didn't spend hours. Any questions? All those in favour of 1 to 3? Against, carried. Okay, 7.4 on page 181. Well done, team, annual plan team, and rates team. Thank you very much. Great work. I'm sure our constituents will thank you as well. Okay, 181. Fire security operations plan. We have 3 recommendations there. Jack, would you like to move?
Yes, I'm very happy to move.
Seconder, please. Thank you, Amy. Any comments from Don or Jack?
Oh, I'd like to congratulate the staff on putting this together. We have something like 61 KPIs, and I think it sets a pretty good example to the way that council can do business. I think it's the accountability here is really strong. It's ambitious, but we're confident that we can, barring any major sort of pandemic issues, I'm confident that we can deliver.
Thank you, Jack. Yep. Okay. So this is,
Sorry, just one more question on this. Is this printed yet, or is it to go to printer on passing? Just because there's another little bit that I can show later on.
I think we'd have to adopt it first and then it may
Absolutely,
or
yeah,
may
it's
not
just,
go to
it's
the-
open for typos being corrected.
Oh,
If we can go to page 187, it's just the chart there is pest species on the plan, the chart totals are incorrect, but it's purely minor. You've got
143. is that right?
yeah, on the chart itself, it's got banned from sale or distribution. There are 35 plants and the total is 38, so it's just purely semantics. But it's a minor detail there. And also
Oh.
eradication is 35, should be 33.
Eagle-eyed, well done. Well, happy to move subject to
Yes,
confirmation of
yes,
actual figures.
yeah,
And that was the only one you found, Martin?
sorry,
That was the only one?
that was all, yeah.
You say me.
Just a question for clarification from me, just in terms of the financial summary, which is on page 190. I'm just wondering where the freshwater work sits. It's not itemised there, so I presume it sits within one of those buckets. Okay. Jack has just told me it sits in biodiversity.
Biodiversity. There is
Even though-
another typo there, eradication 22, 3 and 8, made it 33, not 35.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Marty mentioned that one. Thanks, Josh.
Sorry, Jack answered my question, but he was wrong.
I was helping out.
Yeah, so just to clarify my question, and the pest species in the plan, we have listed freshwater species. And then when we look at the Protea, there's just nowhere to see where those freshwater species and the work that goes towards them sits. And so I'm just assuming it's within one of these buckets, but I just wondered if that could be clarified.
It's in that diseases and incursions.
With our Okay.
pest fish work under those incursions.
Thank you.
So this report's been finished well ahead of time too, hasn't it? Is that right?
Oh, a little bit ahead of time, yeah, 6 weeks or so, yeah.
Yeah, they're always great documents out of biosecurity, biodiversity, I've got to say.
Well ahead of time. Okay, thanks very much for that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. 7.5, submissions on freshwater and Indigenous biodiversity national instruments, 211. And we have some amendments or changed.
Nothing's actually on the table at the moment, so we've just changed the recommendations.
211.
Try and share it on the screen. So everyone's-
Okay.
If I kind of look on back there.
Councillors are somewhat aware of the changes that have been made. Ben, did you want to speak to these?
Yes, so, Chair, so these changes just reflect conversation with the workshop last week. And we landed on a position that council would like to see what the sector submission looks like before making that decision whether we as an individual need to make a submission. So the amendments to the recommendations there just reflect that. So you see an item 4 up there. So that we want to, the idea is to delegate to a subgroup of councillors the ability to actually make that decision for whether we need to make a submission, and then if we do, that same group of councillors will then approve the content of the submission. We're aware that the sector submission should be available, at least a draft of that, later this week. And we also note that I sent an email out, I think it was yesterday.
Yep.
Just asking for if you've got any particular issues, and I know there's 1 or 2 at the workshop had some, if you could put them through, and then that would help us inform us, and we can do that comparison with the sector submission, and then to give some advice then on whether we should make that submission.
And so the subgroup that's been suggested, what sort of meeting timetable, or would it be email or?
I suspect it would all be done by email, Chair. Yeah, we might need to meet to make that decision, but we would just, depending on the councillors, we would make a call about doing that. It'd be pretty quick, the meetings.
And the other question that we had was TTMAC. How, I know we're not quite sure how that's going to work, and what's in your mind's eye, how's it going to work then?
Yeah, and next week in terms of certainty, so you see that the way that the resolution number 5 is written, it's pretty general, just saying that it'll go to them. Not when in the process, and I was hoping to leave that call to be made with engaging with those councillors, with that subgroup of councillors. It's a bit of a timing thing, so I didn't want to say a process of councillors first and then to TMAC and then back to councillors. It may be that we might need to go to councillors and TMAC at the same time, just because the timing doesn't allow for it. So hence the flexibility.
Yeah, I think our main concern was that we would, as the subgroup, have the opportunity to see what TTMAC had said.
No, so you definitely have the ability to do that and then still respond to that. I suspect you won't get much feedback, if at all. What they do like, though, is they like to see the submissions because it can help inform their own submissions, and it's just contributing to be able to see what else is there.
Thank you. So I do have 4 names that we've suggested, and they are Jack, Justin, Amy, and myself on that subgroup. So there will be 4 of us. So if there's no objection to that, we'll add those names in recommendations 3 and 4. And move, Marty. Thank you. All 5, sorry. Seconded, Amy. Oh, thanks, Terry. Any further comments or questions?
Well, just a heads up, Ben, as I did raise in the workshop, but the point I'll be passing back to you in the next couple of days is around some of the provisions in that the Indigenous biodiversity policy around, you know, the treatment of SNAs on Māori freehold title as opposed to general title. The provisions are in there that, you know, quite clearly spell out that, you know, economic well-being of those, you know, that own Māori freehold land, you know, won't be impeded or, you know, impacted by the SNAs placed on that property. And my personal opinion is that, you know, that treatment, you know, based on ethnicity, really. Well, I'm a great supporter of the development of Māori land. Must happen, you know, for the well-being of people in my constituency. But I see this type of policy as actually divisive and to a degree bad, you know, has negative impacts on race relations.
I think that can probably come through in the subgroup, Justin, but I do note that the...
well, no, I'm just sharing it amongst the councillors that are on that, because we're going to have the debate. So I'm just, it's food for thought. You know, you can think about it over the next few days.
And you have done that previously, yeah. But I think there's a little bit more to it than that, personally, having read some of the papers as well. But anyway, we'll talk about that as a subgroup. So any further questions or comments?
Well, just without any details at all, I would contrast that, but I think it's a deeper conversation to be had than has been had in the room at present.
I think if councillors take the time to read what's in there, they will be comforted that it's not as big an issue as what they've been projected just now. Okay, so all those in favour of 1, 2, 5?
Aye.
Against? No, there's only 5 on there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is what we're,
Oh,
what's
sorry,
on the
it's been
screen
updated, isn't it?
is what we're
Yep.
agreeing to, not what's in your agenda.
Right, thank you.
Okay. Very good. Anyone against? Carried. Okay, 7.6, Timana OTY funding on page 214. Okay, so we have got recommendations 1 through to 6. Move it, Moved Marty, thank you. Seconded by someone, please. Jack, thank you. Comments and questions? So all these align with what we've been talking about in our strategic partnership discussions, don't they?
Sure, Chair, correct, and aligned with the advice from Tatima.
Yeah.
This is a mirror image of what was presented in the last.
Nothing further? Okay. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. 7.7, Tanga Whenua Environmental Monitoring Fund, draft allocation policy 218. And we have only 2 recommendations there. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Marty. Seconded, Colin.
Thank you.
Questions, comments? With a bit of work done there. No. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. 7.8, formal endorsement of submissions made into the National Adaptation Plan by the Joint Climate Change Adaptation Committee 224. I'm guessing you would like to move, Amy?
No, she put-
Yes, please. Thank you.
And seconder, please.
Oh, that's it.
Thank you, Jack. Any comments or questions? Just to, we'll know that Malcolm definitely had permission to sign it on behalf of everyone else.
I'd just like to thank the staff for the work on this. There's a lot of manoeuvring.
It had to be pretty quick, didn't it?
Yeah,
As
it's
well.
quite nimble. So thank Tom and the crew.
Very good submission. So all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, that takes us past all the decision-making matters. We'll move on to operational reports. 8.1 is the Chair's report to Council, page 267. I will move. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Rick. Any questions on that report? No. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. 8.2, Chief Executive's report to Council, page 269. One page over. Thank you, Rick. Rick moves. Seconded, Amy. Another comprehensive report. Thank you very much. And again, just mention Natasha Stubbing's Emerging Leaders Award, which was, she's not in the room, but excellent to have that recognition. And she's off in September, I think it is, over to the US, which is awesome. Questions? Yes.
Questions? No, look, I just want to comment first. I want to go to page 297 on maritime, and welcome Lawrence for being in our public area there, because he had a question for me on the navigation safety bylaws, and this one, and I did discuss with him before that the bylaw was due to be passed this year, and it's been put on hold. It's due for its 5 years. It's been put on hold because of Maritime New Zealand, and his particular concern was around kiteboarding, and that will, and I'm just letting him know that that will be discussed when this comes up at the new council within, we're hoping 6 months, but it may be longer. So that will be, that's when it will be discussed, and obviously we encourage you, Lawrence, to comment and submit. So just acknowledging your presence here. Thank you. So my other question was, I've just got a couple of comments. Just regarding the oil, the spill into the harbour with the logging truck, does regional council have to pay for that, or does the logging, what happens with that in moving that? Is it the logging truck, logging company here? That's on the same page, I think, the logging truck page 297.
That'd be their liability.
I just wonder, should be, yeah. I just wondered, it says we shifted it.
No,
My understanding is we're
Yeah.
trying to cover what we can.
Yeah, we do. So through the chair, they will claim back through the insurance company of the
Right.
logging truck firm.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks, Victoria. So, and my other one, I know civil defence comes up and it is covered in page 295 here. So I did want to first of all acknowledge we had our meeting last week, the week before, and acknowledge the work that the staff have done on this. So, and I'm sure you'll if you've read the partnership charter, that is, just want to bring that up to your attention. It's outlined a shared vision between us and central government as well. So it's very important. There's 5 facets there. We had a good discussion on that at our meeting and very well received. So thank you again to the staff and for their effort in that. And I think my comment as chair of CDM was that even though nothing's happening and fingers crossed it won't be happening for a while, you're still very, very busy. And we only have to look at the Facebook numbers here. They were huge in January when things were happening, and they're quieting down now. But civil defence is very much on the floor for Northlanders. So do want to acknowledge the part that we play in that. So thank you.
thanks, Rick.
Oh, sorry, one more thing on mask. Colin, there is a mask issue in Northland, and we did, on behalf of CDM, write to the broadcasting minister and the civil defence minister requesting that something be done in support of this mask, which I cannot remember, 210 households, I don't think, with this mask removed in the far north, were unable to receive updates, so, and unable to have reception in that area as well. So it's very critical that this mask be reinstated at quite an expense. I think it was quoted, I can't remember. They weren't prepared to front up with a new mask, but Victoria may have an update on that. We have written, we have concerns for the far north, so we are working on it. Thank you.
It was National Radio Station, wasn't it?
RNZ.
Yeah.
Yes, and it has had an effect on the radio reception.
Well, it's AM. They won't provide an AM service. They'll only provide an FM service, which isn't available for everyone.
The 210.
Is that RNZ?
Well, people could go online, have online radio.
If they've got
Yeah.
the
Got
ability
internet,
to,
yeah.
which they haven't.
Right.
The further north you go, yeah. So
Oh,
it's got,
so,
Right. Sweet. Thank you.
okay, so we may be delving into the CDM
Yeah, I know, I've
committee
got-
meeting report.
I've got some more comments on that.
Okay.
I guess just following on from Rick's comment there, I guess I just wondered, yeah, it kind of relates to our connectivity discussions for the whole of Northland, all those different forms of getting information. And so from a CDM perspective, it's crucial, that mask. That's my question.
Yeah, so there are the communities up there that rely on that AM radio mast to find out about any emergency messaging that is coming out. And so we've actually taken, as well as writing to the ministers, we're taking it to the Northland Lifelines group as well. So we'll be talking to the telcos there about connectivity in the far north. So that's another area that we're investigating.
Oh, thank you.
I've just got a brief question for Colin Dale. The charges, top of page 275, the charge for farm dairy effluent that was discharged. Look, without getting into that case at all, I'm just concerned, does this have any implications for our ability to manage any future issues at that site?
Sorry, councillor, for the, on page
275.
275, which.
Top of the page, farm dairy effluent. Yeah.
So I don't think it will. I think that is a farm that will be on the market and sold. It's my understanding that the person is quite old. probably beyond, day-to-day management of that farm. So I think his lawyer was trying to arrange to sell the property. But I can follow that up just to make sure.
No, I don't think I need any more information. Just like what I'm concerned about, of course, is that with this result, how can we prevent further incursions? So, and also, do you know? I mean, this may not be a fair question, but do you know of any other times that this defence is being used in any cases that we've had to deal with?
Top of my head, I mean, we've dealt with a number of health issues over time, but this is the first one I can recall specifically being identified as an issue where it's been basically discharged.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you. That's all.
Any further
Yeah, probably not a hardy annual here again, just looking at page 294 and road fatalities again. Little concerned the fatality that we are getting. And 4 days last week, we got another 4 fatalities in the park, 3 on main highways and 1 to Mangakati Road, I think. So I don't think it's the main highway at this stage, but Kenwell, Count Road. So yeah, and yeah, it's just disappointing. I just want to have people. It's strain on our emergency services, our volunteers, and whatever. I'm just talking. You go into a crash like that, and had a real bad one on Thursday night. Little kids involved. Whatever. It was terrible. And you just look at all the people that are involved there. The bystanders, people who got there first. You've got the fire brigade, you've got the police, you've got the ambulance, and then you've got the undertaker comes along, and you've got the choppers. And yeah, so it's I don't know what the hell we do about it, but it's yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. And when there's little children involved, it's and this one and the other night we had this crash, and there was 2 cars, 2 adults in each car. That's 4. And about 6 children, 3 or 4 in one and 2 in the other, not restrained, and we got the bodies, people everywhere, and whatever, and we cut this lady out of the car. Car was on the side, she was lying out, trapped, just got her out, and she passed away. That's all right. And about 15 minutes later, still looking around, and we hear murmur. And there's one of the firefighters got in the car, and here's this 4-month-old baby under the seat. And we got her out, and she survived. The little one survived, but it was just hit, healed back, and whatever. And we had a new girl in the brigade. She hadn't been here 6 months, and she held this baby for about an hour, and got her in the chopper, and another baby, another 18-month-old kid, and got her in the chopper, and this little kid says to the girl, "Come on, I want you to come with me." Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
dramatic. So I've been in that fire 54 years now, and yeah, I just want to think,
Yeah, it's I can't only imagine what
I
it's
don't know
like.
what we can do. I don't know what we can do about it, but yeah, it's just.
It's good to get off your chest, mate. Good to get it off your chest.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good. Thank you. And just one other thing we have, which is good within our service, we do have critical incident stress. So we have people that come in and you have to talk about it. That crash, I know we were there for 5 hours. We were there, and yeah. So that's me. Thank you.
It's fine. Right. On the CEO report. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Certainly acknowledge your anguish. Certainly acknowledge your anguish and your frustration and your hard work. And your team's hard work. Okay, we'll move on to receipt of committee minutes and working party group updates. We'll go to 9.1.
Just backtrack a minute, knowing that we can't do much about it, but is there statistics coming out as to say why, you know, if it's getting worse, how it's getting worse, to put it out there to the public as to how it might be able to resolve with public input rather than regulatory input.
Yeah, that's an RTC.
I accept that.
Yeah, and I'm sure Rick will take that sort of feedback back, and you attend those meetings too, don't you, Colin? Yeah. Okay, so Marty, you want to take this one, or is there a recommendation there? No, we just.
Yes, so that,
Oh, yeah, so move and seconder for those minutes. Thank you, Amy. Seconder.
Yep.
Thanks, Rick.
What page?
We'll go to page 303. So we'll go to verbal updates from the chairs. Te Onorohi Atoi board minutes. Marty, how did that meeting go?
They're always good. I'm still waiting to see success happen. There's 4 matters with speed limits and spreading ashes, signage. Those are 3 that I can remember. Ben's not here, so the 4th. But so we're still waiting for the district council to help with speed limits. Spreading ashes, that's a cultural change required there. So it's going to be, it might be okay to put the rules in place, but it's going to be very difficult to change behaviour so that someone from Tauranga who wants to spread their ashes on Tōna Tohe is going to desist from doing it. I mean, I'm guilty of, or as a family, we're guilty of having spread our mother's ashes. So it is a practice, but to do it on a culturally sensitive area, then that's not on. But how do you change a whole psyche of people wanting to do that? Speed limits and signage still to be done. So the plan is in place, but it's a matter of getting traction on it and actually these plans being implemented. It's just a matter of time and putia.
Okay. How was the putia going?
There's some still. I'm sorry, I don't remember the how much is still in. But then there's also how do they move? How does as a committee move forward so that there's income coming to be able to sustain the maintenance and management of the beach. For instance, road user charges or buses going up and down the beach or tourism or fishing competitions, how they contribute towards the maintenance and improvement of the beach. That's going to have to be the go forward. Can't just deplete a diminishing resource.
Another one, they're looking at partnerships now too, like the 90-mile beach snapper bonanza. So partnership with those people and commercial way. I don't know. And the other one that comes up now is the dynamics of the beach in relation to getting on the beach. High tides, low tides, climate change, the 90-mile REM. At the moment, it's keeps washing out. So basically what we're saying is that beach is four-wheel drive. So that may have a effect on our tourist buses, that sort of thing. So, you know, you've got to have four-wheel drive, that sort of thing. And another thing that's come up is in relation to emergency services getting on that beach too. You know, it's like a highway, and there are crashes and that. So you always have a problem. You know, getting the ambulance there or fire service with rescue equipment. So there's all those issues.
Practical stuff.
Add one other matter, just seeing as we're bouncing backwards forwards, is destruction of the dunes by either four-wheelers or bikes going up onto the dunes. So if there's anybody's got a spare 1,000 acres to be able to take both all these dune buggies and whatever and put them in an area where you can't destroy the ambience. And I think we also have the same problem out of the forestry here, don't we? Here, where it's just loud noise, big, yeah,
Okay,
people having fun in their vehicles.
okay. So these updates are to talk to the meetings that you've just had,
Yep.
and the items that have been raised, and then.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Joint Climate Change Adaptation Committee. Amy.
Yeah, thank you. So we had a good meeting. We got confirmation that all the councils had endorsed the Joint Climate Adaptation Strategy, which has kind of been bouncing around in the process of getting its approval. So that was a big milestone, and yeah, much appreciation for all the staff work that went into that. We had a really good item on the Te Ao Māori decision-making framework, which is a piece of work that's being led by Whangarei District Council on behalf of the Joint Committee. And that's also, that came to our Te Tīmek as well. So I think councillors are all familiar with it. The final report hasn't been produced yet. But yeah, really excellent piece of work, which really I think will be valuable for cultural competency across local government for how we engage with Māori and how that flows into our decision making. And while it's been generated in the context of climate change adaptation, certainly as the work has been undertaken, they've seen that it's really applicable across all subject matter for local government. So a good piece of work that we should be seeing the output quite soon. And then the other thing of note was the submission, which we have just retrospectively approved in our meeting earlier. And again, just a really good example of collaboration happening across all 4 Northland councils, and much appreciation to the staff that managed to pull together a submission that all 4 councils could actually agree with, which is a good valuable undertaking, and a really good, I guess, signal of the way we can hope to continue to work in the climate change space, just with that real collaboration. And also through the Joint Committee, because we have that Māori representation, it was a good way to have our Māori representatives reviewing and inputting into that submission as well. So those were the key things on the agenda. Yeah, thank you.
Right, thanks, Amy. Regional Transport Committee.
Right, thanks, Chair. So I'll just go straight to page 314. Even though it only mentions the report was received on the Northland Road Safety Update, I assure you, Councillor Kitchen, that it is one of the most valued reports. They're all valued, but everybody's very interested in the updates on road safety and everything. And this meeting, unfortunately, occurred just before that, so those Northland ones. But it is absolutely top of our agenda. So thank you. I just want to now, this is our first meeting we had in the chambers live in the format, and I do want to take this opportunity to thank Victoria Harwood, our group manager. She instigated the workshop for RTC, so we meet for an hour and a half before our meeting, and it's a very valuable contribution to what RTC does in the following formal meeting. So it's very valuable, and it's been well received by all participants, staff of the councils as well as councillors. So thank you for that. So, and my only other comment is, sorry, 2 more comments. We did write the letter to the Minister asking to be Minister Davis, expressing our concerns regarding Northland, and unfortunately I was not available when he arrived here, but we have had we are seeking a reply from him on those and working on those concerns, and they are covered in item 5.3 on the previous page, which is 313. So the other item I have on 314 is, you'll see there at very at the bottom, the capital projects. Sorry, my mistake. The one before, regarding receiving back from Steve Martin, Wakakatahi representative, that we will receive an update from the board meeting regarding allocations, funding allocations for roading, so we won't receive that until after the August board meeting, hopefully at our September RTC meeting. Posting on the updates on here.
That was 5.5, right? 5.5 on 313.
5.4, sorry, not 5.
Okay.
Apologies. So that funding update will come through in the September meeting, hopefully, if it's discussed at the Watakatani board meeting in August 2020.
Okay, KMR, I'll make a start on that. So we had our June meeting, and the year 3 annual work plan is all but. It's pretty much finalised from a committee perspective. We're just waiting for MFE, which may have already happened by now. It was imminent. They were struck down with COVID and flu in their department. So that was just the only reason that it was taking a bit longer. There were no problems that the team were aware of. So that should go to plan, and that will be big push for planting and sediment reduction plans in the year 3. Conflict of interest management was discussed, however, it's been laid on the table with some more work to be done there. We discussed in-kind contributions policy, which was pretty much just a tidy up. The Potataki update, as always from Justine, was informative. Yep. And then there was some interesting, at the end there, we had some discussion from, or presentations from Healthy Waters, which highlighted blue carbon opportunities, and then another presentation from EnviroStrat, which showcased some mahi of the Waikato Regional Authority and highlighted some aquaculture marine opportunities. So while not things that KMR would fund necessarily, they could work in some way in that we would get funding from these organisations or incorporate them somehow into the KMR scheme. In the full agenda, there's 4 minutes, there'd be some more information on that, or you could Google those two. EnviroStrat anyway, they had good website there. Anything further from Amy or Joss? Anything more that you'd like to add? There's a couple of questions coming.
Yeah, I can add a couple of things. Just the other 2 aspects of the year 3 annual work plan that's probably worth touching on, which is it's including some of the new initiatives that will enable the implementation of Kōrero Tukuiho, which is the Mā Tauranga Māori strategy, and how it aligns with the KMR program. It basically is looking at how you enable effective long-term monitoring and evaluation, and also supporting the development of partnerships and bring in third-party contributions. So that's another aspect that's sort of covered in that year 3 annual work plan. And then the other part of that is really just around the operational funding that's required. And a big part of that is actually the digital tools aspect of it. And there's some really good potential cross-pollination, if you like, with regional council and the online digital tools that we have access to, and hopefully it's going to make some expansion that will be able to be used by councils as well. So there's some incredible work that's happening in that space as part of this whole Kaupapa Moana work. And I think that's really important. So that's another aspect of what's included in that year 3 annual work plan. That's the only bits that I'd add. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, nice. Thanks, Joss. We've got a question from Marty and then from Jack.
Yeah, just a question on the conflict of interest management. There has been a point raised into TMAC of areas of possible potential conflict of interest because there are so few people doing the work or able to do the work or commit time to doing work within to TMAC, to TWAG and MTAG. There can be perceived taking on a job and a role, or taking on a role where you're already involved in it for obviously being paid for it, which is a challenge. So it'd be interesting to see, you know, if you could highlight that conflict of interest management item to see how we can try and resolve that sort of issue.
Yeah, okay, Malcolm can talk to it. This conflict of interest was initially in this agenda about between governance and grants, but it's actually got a bit broader than that. Malcolm?
Yeah, Chair, so the specific issue being dealt with here is trying to reconcile Auckland City's conflict of interest policy and our own. And essentially, I think that the differences have occurred due to the different size of the organisations. So Auckland City has had to take a slightly different tack to one that we're able to take because we're a bit smaller, we can be a bit more nimble around these things. But Bruce has got a team stood up that is busy looking at this and working on it to try and reconcile. And it's one of the sort of minor admin type challenges that come up when we creating these new co-governance collaborative forum that we find we bump into different policy settings.
Thanks.
Thank you. Jack?
Just a brief one about carry forwards. I mean, obviously, this is a project that's really vulnerable to anything from COVID to weather and whatnot. And I guess my understanding is that a great deal of the expenditure comes in the winter months anyway because of the planting and whatnot. So it is vulnerable. Are we confident that all parties, like say both regional councils, have adequate facility to carry forwards for their contributions and they won't be affected in the future?
Yeah, Chair, I mean, you would have seen in the financial report our
ours is fine.
Yeah, reserve. I mean, understanding, and I don't have specific confirmation about Auckland, but that tended not to have a problem in the past in terms of their funding.
I'm just worried about the multiplier effect with MB.
Well, yeah. So obviously we need to have our shares to be able to get the crown money, and I know I've recently just signed a variation with Fonterra, with a Fonterra contract to again ensure that the crowns that available to us. So it is something that the team will look at.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
I mean, sorry, Chair. I mean, what does make this difference is quite a big chunk of it is in kind, it's not cash. And so, you know, if the work's not done, the in kind's not done, you've got to sort of catch that up somehow.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, civil defence.
Right, I won't repeat myself on what I talked about before. So, look, I just wanted to say this is the first time again that we've been in council, and we had a very, very good turnout. If you look at page 319 on the representatives, we had all our elected members there, which was great. We even had alternative members there, so thank you, Councillor Kitchen, for attending. You'll see also we had the superintendent and the Waipiri Henwood, the district manager for Fens, and also Chloe Marshall from Wellington. So we had a really good turnout. If you look further down the list, the Navy is represented there as well. It was an excellent turnout for our first meeting in person for some time. So I think everybody appreciated it, and it was a very good discussion. I do again want to thank the staff. They did individual presentations this time, which was very well received, and we want to keep that going forward. Some members of the CDF team, civil defence team, spoke on their reports, which was excellent and well received again. So thank you for that, and please pass it on, Victoria. And it was your first open meeting as head chair, so well done on that. The only other comment I would like to make is on page 321. Is the secretarial note there saying that I did thank Sandra Broadman, who is the group controller for WDC, but she was deputy chair of the KEG, and she stood down after 5 years. Great turnout, but it was very good to have John Burke on as the new one. So the CDM is like us again, hopefully having a quiet time, but working very hard collaboration between governance and management. So
Thanks very much, Rick. So all those in favour of
Also,
9.1?
just
Oh, sorry.
one point or one question, is both in the CDM and RTC is tangata whenua involvement. Is or
so in terms of RTC, it's a legislative both. No, so in terms of that, these we have not got specific representation there. It's up to the individual council to put forward. So there's no specification in the legislation. My understanding is that one.
Yeah, so through the chair, there isn't any requirement under the legislation at the moment, but with the coordinating executive group, which is the operational committee that meets before the group meeting, we've co-opted 3 iwi representatives onto that. And then the emergency management bill review that's going through at the moment, they're hoping then to make it legislative requirement to have iwi representation on the CDM group, sort of the governance level as well. So that's for the civil defence, but the RTC at the moment currently doesn't have that requirement.
Thank you.
Another one, they are working very closely with the RISE.
Oh, yeah.
And also a lot of the response plans as such, there are very easy representatives of the committees to not.
So
I think we could do more
how would you go about changing that?
So, Chair, I mean, it's actually stronger than a requirement. I mean, a few years ago, and I can't recall exactly how long ago, the legislation was changed, restricting the membership to the councils. So prior to that, we used to have a broader membership, and the legislative, as I said, was changed, restricting the membership of the actual committee. And that's why we've had these other structures to be able to get the input that then goes up to the committee, but the committee is restricted in its numbers by legislation. So the only way to resolve it is go through Parliament. And as Victoria said, that work is underway.
or to have them as part of the council within that structure.
Well, that's there already. What the levers that we've got already in place.
Right.
It's to go that next step, which is the governance decision-making table, that can only be done.
Thank you.
Right, so all those in favour of 9.1 receipt of committee minutes?
Aye.
Against? Carried. 9.2 working party updates and chairperson's briefing. So we'll go to climate change first and just note that the joint climate change has already been done.
Yeah. Thank you, Penny. So we had a good meeting. It was kind of a bit of a, I guess, a progress update. We have had a number of new staff join the team. So they're going through a process of establishing themselves in the role and kind of looking at mapping out the work ahead for them and for the team. We had quite an extensive and really productive, I thought, discussion around how we can optimize our governance structures for climate change. And that's basically around the concept that we have the climate change working party and we also have the joint committee, and servicing those, that committee and the working party takes a lot of staff time, which then takes away from their ability to actually undertake work. So we didn't come up with an answer in that session, but it was really good to have that conversation, and it's quite timely with the new staff arriving and also us looking ahead to the next term for the next council. So just a bit of a work in progress, but really happy with what's been achieved on our strategy and its implementation, and just looking forward to setting things up to continue the success. So thank you.
Thanks, Amy. By the person by security.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we had a very busy meeting. You can see there's 10 major dot points. So just like to comment on 4 areas that we're really achieving some major runs on the board. Our operational plan we've talked about. Our marine work has been pretty solid. And I think you'll find that the kind of criticisms we've been getting from a very small minority seem to be getting us, the minority is getting smaller. We get we've got a heck of a lot of support for our marine program, which is getting good runs on the board. Likewise, the feral deer program, that's really been stepped up. We've got new staff. We're doing very well in that space. That's not just in Russell, but feral deer. Also, our dune lakes and coastal care programs are doing great stuff. It'd be lovely if one day we could actually have a site visit or two to some of those places where we're achieving magnificent results, by the way, because as I keep repeating, our dune lakes are utterly unique on the planet, and some of them are actually unique individually on the planet, and the work we're doing there is very, very important. Just like to highlight 2 areas of challenge, not just challenge going forward, not criticism. That's the involvement of tangata whenua in Pestry 2050, and also by implication with other works in HVAs and CPCAs. It's going to be something we're going to have to support our staff in and giving them direction and getting opinions back from tangata whenua. It's an emergent and growing area, but it's not going to be entirely smooth sailing. Some areas will be easier than others, but it's just a challenge that the team has taken on. And the other one is road and rail plans for weeds, something that neither Waka Kotahi or Kiwi Rail or the 3 district councils have ever taken seriously. So we're putting a bit more emphasis on that. So that'll be a challenge, and we've given ourselves 2 fairly, not over ambitious, but fairly solid KPIs for the development in the next year. But I'd like to finish by saying I'd just like to thank the staff for the increased engagement with MPI we've had over the last year. I know I've mentioned it before, but there was a 2-day wānanga up in Waitangi 2 weeks ago, and at which council, Malcolm and I were there, and Marty and quite a few of the staff. And I think council did very well out of that in terms of our demonstrating our partnership intentions and results with MPI, but also our partnership and handholding with tangata whenua. I mean, I thought MPI did very well to basically put up with 2 days of mamai really about complaints about the past and stuff, but and they got a real handle on the size of the issues in Northland. And so I'd just like to thank the staff for how well they've done, their success in getting partnerships with MPI, which have given us a lot of dollars and a lot of progress over these 4 different areas. So, and that's reflected in the working party reports. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, and I'll just go to a mover and seconder for those updates. Thanks. Thank you, Jack and Amy. Any questions?
Just a question or comment, because we're getting so much stick, uneducated stick on the Sabella, on the fan worm. Are we getting much public profile on the success or how it's been maintained? Held back, Jack, in public forum?
Just in the last week, we've received the latest MPI independent diving results, which I've passed on to Don, and I think I circulated to councillors as well.
Yeah.
And have asked Don to work with a comms team around how we get that out of the public.
Probably in a big
Just like to point out,
poster on the Russell waterfront.
We are having a meeting with the Kerikeri, our workshop is being arranged with the Kerikeri Cruising Club, and in which that and other issues will be discussed.
Jack, with that, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. Right, that brings us to the end of the public section of our meeting. So thank you all to those who have attended on our live stream. We'll now be signing off, so go well and enjoy the rest of your weeks. Kia ora.
Thanks.
Can I have a thank you, Amy. Seeking to Rick to go into public excluded.